So, what is academic English? Well, academic English is an example of something that we call linguistic registers. Whether or not we realize it, we all speak and write in different linguistic registers at different times depending on the context. You can think of linguistic registers as a sort of level of formality, ranging from low to high. Lower registers of speech are what we use in casual or informal situations. For example, when you are talking with your friends or close family members. You are already familiar with them, so you don't need to try too hard to be polite or professional. However, if you are in a more formal setting, such as giving a public speech, or if you are writing an important business or legal document, you would want to use a much more polite or professional sounding language. This is what we refer to as a high register. Academic English is a relatively high register. This means that we use more technical vocabulary and we avoid lower register things like slang. But wait, there is more to this than formality or politeness. Academic English is not just meant to make you sound clever, it is also meant to help your reader learn something from your writing. This means that it should also be enjoyable to read, which is where we come to the question of style. There are actually different types of academic writing, and they each have their own style. Scientific journals, for instance, are usually quite dry, technical, and data-heavy. They try to give the reader a lot of information in a clear but unexciting manner. At the other extreme, philosophical or literary writings will use lots of sophisticated intellectual language that might make the author seem very clever, but is not very clear. History lies somewhere in the middle between these two. Good historical writing is not just sophisticated and intellectual, it should also be clear and enjoyable to read. When you are writing academic work in English, you should ask yourself 3 key questions about your style. Is my writing formal enough? Have I used any colloquial slang or colloquial speech? Is my writing clear enough? Will my reader be able to understand what I'm saying? And lastly, is my writing natural enough? Does it sound like something a real person would say? Getting the right style and register is probably one of the most difficult parts of writing academic English. You can't learn these things in a book, but only from experience. However, Professor McManus and I can give you some useful tips and advice.
師婆，我好開心講廣東話同你。我好開心講廣東話同你。
你收咗？
點解？
你同我講廣東話好開心。
而家我明白啦，我同你講廣東話好開心。
The words are all there, but the order is wrong. Translating an English sentence directly into Cantonese may be understandable, but it usually sounds strange and unnatural. The same is true when you try to translate either Cantonese or Putonghua sentences directly into English. Professor McManus and I often see students make the same mistakes in English sentence construction over and over again. This is because of the simple fact that English and Chinese each have their own distinct word orders that do not match each other. Over time, with enough practice, you will learn to translate your ideas into English more fluently without having to think too hard about it. In the meantime, though, let's go over some important basics that you should bear in mind when constructing sentences in English. English has 4 main parts of speech: nouns, adjectives, verbs, and adverbs. Nouns denote the main things in a sentence: people, objects, places, ideas, feelings, and so on. They can either be the subject or the object of a verb. That is to say, they can be the one doing the verb, or they can have the verb done to them. In a grammatical sentence, a noun must be linked somehow to a verb. Adjectives give us information about nouns. Unlike Chinese, English almost always distinguishes between nouns and adjectives. For example, I am a historian of the Byzantine Empire. Byzantine is an adjective describing empire, a noun. However, Byzantine cannot ever be used on its own as a noun. This is different from Chinese, where words like 中国 can be used to mean both China and Chinese.
Verbs tell us about the main action in a sentence, for example, walking, eating, thinking, and so on. Lastly, adverbs describe how verbs are carried out. Again, English almost always distinguishes between the forms of adjectives and adverbs. For instance, I am thoughtful, but I speak thoughtfully. These are the four main building blocks of an English sentence, and they're joined by a whole group of supporting parts of speech, like pronouns, conjunctions, prepositions, and so forth. Professor McManus, what is the most important ingredient in an English sentence?
The verb.
Yes, the verb. The most important, unbreakable rule of English sentence construction is that you must include a verb. If you don't have a verb, then it means that you don't have a sentence. Or to put it less grammatically, no verb, no sentence. So, you start with a verb. Once you have a verb, think about what is doing the verb, the subject. Some verbs are directly done to another thing, known as the object. We call these transitive verbs. For example, the student reads the book. The student is the subject, reads is the transitive verb, and the book is the object. So far, this is like Cantonese or Putonghua, though many more complex sentences have different structures, such as those using prepositions and indirect objects. Not all verbs are transitive, though. When a verb describes an action that does not affect anything else, we call it an intransitive verb. Examples of intransitive verbs include I sleep or the student yawns. Some verbs can be either transitive or intransitive depending on the context. Take the verb grow. It is possible to say that the plant grows, but it is also possible to say that I grow the plant. These building blocks, nouns, adjectives, verbs, and adverbs, join together to form a clause. While a sentence only needs one clause, we can also put multiple different clauses together in a sentence. When you're constructing your sentences in English, always remember to start with a clause containing a main verb and then build the other parts of the sentence around it. In the last part of this video, I want to highlight some useful terms and expressions that you can use to make your sentences fit together better as a whole. As you write, it is important to remember that your reader does not know what you are planning in your own head. Instead, your reader relies on cues within your work to understand where they are in your essay and where you are going to take them. These are signposting terms, and they help your reader find their way around your writing. Let's start with some outline words. Let your reader know where you are in your argument. We have terms like to begin, firstly, lastly, moving on, the next point, in conclusion, to conclude, or in summary. Addition words show that you have more than one argument or piece of evidence. These are terms like moreover, furthermore, in addition, besides, likewise, and similarly. Contrast words, highlighting contrast or difference between two or more things, is an important part of writing an argumentative essay. Terms like however, on the other hand, by contrast, nonetheless, nevertheless, despite, or still. Suggestion words invite your reader to follow your line of thinking. These are terms like perhaps, might, maybe, possibly, probably, it is likely that, or if that were the case. Consequence words, useful words and expressions to show why one thing follows on from another. Terms like therefore, and so, consequently, as a result, thus, or hence. By using signposting vocabulary like this, you will make it much easier for us to follow your writing. Remember, the easier it is for us to understand your writing, the easier it is for you to get a good grade.